Are you guys ready to learn how to persuade people? Yeah. Are you excited about this? All right, let's get started. So let me give you a little background on why we're doing this topic tonight. We spent now 15 sessions talking about things like how to raise money from angel investors, how to find partners, how to build your business, how to do marketing and PR, how to go out there and build a lot of traffic, how to get your internet company bought. But all those things are kind of talking about the what. And tonight for me is a little bit about the how. And my goal is I want to help each of you raise money for your companies, make more money in your companies, have better relationships, enjoy what you're doing more, and just be overall more successful in your startup venture. And I think if you give me an hour tonight of your time, I can help you get along that way. And so that's what we're trying to get done here. We're going to go through the presentation fairly quickly. We're going to open it up for discussion like we always do. And then we've got a bunch of food. We've got a bunch of drinks at the DocStock office a block away. So let's jump in and get started. I'm going to take 30 seconds and tell you why I think I can help you actually persuade people. So a bit of background on me for those of you that may not know. I'll start at the beginning, which is honestly, I probably am not someone that if you had met 15 years ago thought, wow, this is going to be a person that's going to persuade a lot of other folks. I was not that classical, popular person that had people following them and trying to see what they did. In light of that, there have been a couple interesting things that happened in my life. The first is that when I got to college, I ended up getting elected student body president at UCSB out of a school of 20,000 people. Then when I was 21 years old, I started doing motivational speaking and corporate training. And so I figured out how to get colleges and high schools to have me come into their schools and talk to their folks. And then also when I was 21 years old, figured out how to get large corporations to bring me in to do trainings on sales and negotiations without ever having worked in a workplace or ever having done any of those things. So I'd get flown to different seminar rooms and I'd give presentations to folks for about 50 to 100 people, talking to them about how to deal with conflict in the workplace, negotiation, sales, having never done this, my first very job out of college. Then I took a weekend class in hypnotherapy. And for 2 years, from when I was 21 to 23, I was also doing stage hypnosis shows all across the country, where I would go into colleges and there'd be a room of about 500 people, and I would take 20 people up on stage, and I would take the biggest, burliest, athletic guy and make him think that he was giving birth to a little pink teddy bear. And I'd have other people ballet dancing and singing like Madonna. And so there were some skills of persuasion that I learned there. They're going through grad school, in business school and law school. I was probably not what you call a good typical student. But what I did do is I cultivated relationships with about 50 different mentors. And these were folks that have started and sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I spent a lot of time watching them and listening to them and seeing what made them successful and how they persuaded other people. And I started to take notes on how that worked. I started another company when I was in grad school doing consulting for startups. And while I was still going through grad school as a law school student, worked with 30 different companies that paid us to help them write their business plans, marketing plans, and help their businesses grow. When I was still in my last year of grad school, I met Alon, and he and I co-founded and started DocStock. And within 30 days after finishing law school, having never raised money before, never started a business that really employed a lot of other people, we were able to raise $750,000 in angel money, not having a product that was developed yet and in the market, just really on an idea. And these were from some of the most successful folks in LA, including the co-founders of MySpace, Matt Coffin, who had started and sold Lower My Bills for $400 million, and folks like Robin Richards that had started and sold multiple companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. We then went on to raise another set of $3 million, having a product that had no revenue and only about 500,000 people coming to it. Now DocStock, fast forward, has grown a lot. We have over 20 million people a month coming to the site. We're one of the fastest growing sites on the internet. The company's profitable. And as far as the things that I do Persuasion these days, we've got over 2,000 people to come out to our events. Now, when you do them for free and you give away food and alcohol, it's not that hard. So that's probably the least of all of these. But for those of you that don't know, that's a bit about me. And in that time, I spent a lot of time trying to refine and teach myself about how you persuade other people. And those are some of the skills and techniques I want to talk to you about tonight to help you all be more successful in the things that you're doing with your companies or also with your personal lives. And so my goal is I'll know I'll be successful if when everyone leaves here tonight, you feel more confident and sure and capable about the things that you would have to do to persuade other people to get the things that you want in your business or in your personal life. Does that sound like a fair deal? Yeah. All right, let's get started. All right, we got 21 golden rules. This is broken basically into 3 acts. The 3 acts are the general principles, the basics, and then the techniques that we use as individuals. Let's kind of go over my philosophy of basically what persuasion is. Number 1, persuasion is not manipulation. All right, so Robin, real quick, what time are we at? Because I want to make sure that we're good.
We're at 6:45.
All right, so Robin's going to give me the heads up when we're about 20 minutes in from now, and then another 20 minutes after that, and we're going to wrap up and open it up. So persuasion and manipulation are not the same. And I'll tell you my general philosophy. Because my goal is I want you guys leaving here getting the things that you want, but there's a division what that means. For me, manipulation means that you're forcing or coercing someone else to do something that may or may not be in their best interests. That's not what tonight is about. I'm not going to tell you how to manipulate other people. We're here talking about how to persuade folks. And what it means to persuade someone is how to get them to do the things that are in their best interest, but also are of value to you. So really, in my opinion, persuading other people is value creation. You're adding value for them, and you're adding value for you. And by helping other people get the things that they want, we're going to help you get the things that you want. And so some of you may have questions tonight and say, hey, you know, that doesn't seem like something I would do. I don't know if it seems like it's ethical. My goal here is not to talk about the intent behind what we do or what we don't do. I'm trying to simply share a framework of skills and techniques and things to do that will help persuade other people. And what I can promise you is that when you have good intent and when your objective is to help other people get the things that they want and in return you'll get what you want, you're going to be a lot more successful at persuading all sorts of folks. And so I kind of think of it like this angel and the devil, right? Like the devil's the one that may be trying to manipulate you to do the things that are bad for you, but the angel's what's trying to get you to do what's in your own best interest and what they want you to do as well. All right. Rule number 2, persuade the persuadable. Basically, start off working with the folks that you actually have a chance of changing their opinion. So if you even take a campaign, right? If you're running for a campaign as a Democrat, you're not campaigning hard to Republicans. And if you're a Republican, you're not campaigning hard to Democrats. You're going after your base and you're going after the middle ground. You want to find the people that you actually have a chance to affect their behavior. And so I'll tell you 2 general things. And they seem a little contradictory. One is, if you're going to persuade the persuadable, who's persuadable? Everybody. Everyone is persuadable at the right time for the right reason. And that's really important to know. There's no one that isn't persuadable. It's just, are you helping them find what they want at the time that they need it? And is it something that's really important to them? And we'll get into other things like, persistence and stuff like that. But I have a general rule of thumb that you can pretty much ask anybody anything, and 1 out of 10 people are going to say yes to it. Right? You can pretty much ask anyone anything, and a law of averages is that 1 out of 10 people will eventually say yes to it. And so the first thing to focus on is, as you're trying to talk to these people and get what you want done, are you talking to someone that you have a chance to persuade? So let me give it in the context of fundraising. One of the biggest mistakes that we make when we go out and we raise money is we'll spend a lot of time talking to people that are never really going to fund our business. And we would be so much better off if we just ruled those people out and then prospected for new leads. For those of you, how many of you are in sales or doing sales or put up a show of hands, right? The biggest thing in sales is a no is just as good as a yes. What you don't want is a maybe. because you waste your time on maybes. No's are great because you know by the law of averages, if 1 out of 10 people are going to say yes to you, the more no's you're getting, it's getting you closer to a yes. And that's kind of the goal of Persuade the Persuadable, is figure out up front who are the folks you actually have a chance to get them to do the things that you want them to do that are also in their interest. And if they don't fall into that bucket, move on, because there are enough people that you can persuade to get the things that you want. Rule number 3, context and timing matter. And so I'll give you a couple examples from the things that I talked about. And here's an example where I will talk about the stage hypnosis stuff. But like, think of this picture, right? Could you, all right, so there's a lion tamer, and someone's in a circus, and this schmuck is going to put his head in a lion, okay? Do you think if this lion was out, even if it's tame, if this lion was out in the wild, you know, and the wind's breathing on its air, and this guy put his head in his mouth, that he's going to be around to see it? No, because the context and the timing are really important. So, for example, people would always ask me, like, why does a stage hypnosis show work? Like, how do you get someone to do something pretty crazy? And I'll go into later talking about what it means to, like, filter and to control the context. But the first reason a stage hypnosis works is because people are expecting to get hypnotized, right? If I went to a supermarket and I just stood out there in front and I had a big sign saying, hey, I want to hypnotize a bunch of people here, it's not going to work. Why? Because someone's going to a supermarket and they're like, I want to buy my food, I want to get my shit done, I want to get in and out. But if you go to a show that's specifically billed as people are going to get hypnotized tonight, some percent of those people are walking in with the expectation that I may be one of the people called up. So the reason a stage hypnosis show works is because you've set up context where people are expecting going in that something's going to happen. And that's really important overall as far as persuasion, is you want to make sure that you set up the context that people are going to do the things that's appropriate for that environment. One of the things I'm going to do as I go on tonight is, this is actually the first time I'm giving this presentation, so I'm going to look at some notes. The other thing I was thinking about, and I'm going to share some, like, really, I don't know, this is actually pretty embarrassing to share. So I had to go through a physical where a doctor put his finger up my butt for the first time. Like, that was a pretty horrific experience, right? Like, could you imagine, normally, I'm not even sure the law of 1 out of 10 averages would apply to me in this case, but normally if some guy's like, or anyone's like, can I put my finger up your butt, I'm going to say no, right? Well, why did I allow it? Well, I allowed it because the context was really important. The context was just like checking to see if I had like something that could like kill me one day. And it seems like an obvious point. But what I'm trying to say is people will do things that they wouldn't expect them to do if you put them in the right context. Right? A lot of you probably heard of this Stanford prisoner's dilemma, right? Where people that they were set up as guards and then they were set up as prisoners, and the people that were students that were the guards ended up actually abusing and treating the other prisoners inhumanely. Why? Because context matters and how we treat each other. I'll tell you what I think matters when I say timing is, and this goes back to what I was saying before, is that persuade the persuadable, and everyone's persuadable, it just matters when. Just because someone's not persuadable at this moment doesn't mean they won't be at some point later on. So the best example I can give you is take the really hot cheerleader that may not want to date the nerd when she's 21, right? Well, fast forward, maybe 12, 13 years, and when she's 35, it's a different ballgame. Once again, it may seem like an obvious situation, but if she's 35 and she's not married and she's looking to get married and she's got less options, that timing matters. And the person that wasn't persuadable when they were 21 is persuadable maybe when they're 34, 35, 36, 37. So timing and context matter a lot. And we'll come back and I'll try to make sure to give more examples of each of these. All right. And so this is kind of the last general point right now. The person that you're talking to has to be interested in order to be persuaded. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they talk to other folks and they're pitching something or selling something is that we mostly talk about ourselves and what we're doing. We don't talk to people about what's important to them. And that's the key when you want to persuade somebody. If you want to persuade folks, don't talk about you and what's important to you. Talk about them. And there's two ways that you can figure out how to get people interested. One is you can just start asking them questions and they'll tell you what's important. But typically, people have one of three things always on their mind: money, love, and health. It's some combination or variable of each of those, right? At probably 90% of the time, all of us are thinking about money, our businesses, how much money we actually have, how we're going to take care of payroll, how we're going to raise money for our company. Love, our relationships, the relationships that we want to have that we don't have, and health, right? When we're younger, like, do we look good? Like, how's our physique? When we're older, like, shit hurts. These are the things that we think about. And I can promise you that if you sit down with a stranger and you immediately start talking to them about one of those three things for them, they'll be interested. And so in general, there's a 5-step sales process that I think is helpful to throw into this. And this is the 5-step sales process I was taught and I try to do, and I try to follow in almost everything I'm doing. And I talked about with a couple of the guys in the office recently. The 5-step sales process is 1, gain interest, establish credibility, establish need, offer a solution, and have a system for an easy transaction. Gain interest, establish credibility, establish need. What is that person really wants? Not what you think they want, but what they want. Offer a solution that matches that need, and have a system for an easy transaction. At the end of the day, persuasion is really just a form of sales. And so the first thing to always take note of is you'll never be able to persuade somebody that is not interested in you or what you have to say. And what I can promise you is the following is, a lot of you are here to get things done tonight. You're here because you're looking for new business. You're here because you're trying to raise money for a company. You're here maybe just because you want to meet other people in the tech space. And I'll tell you, I've seen 1,500 of us go back to our office afterwards and how we network and socialize. And for the folks that aren't just here to talk and chit-chat, which is, a good fair point and probably a good portion of all of us, but the folks that are here trying to persuade other people, I see a lot of you make a lot of fucking mistakes. And the most basic mistake is that you jump in and you're talking to all these folks about the things that are important to you. And a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes can go by, and you're still talking about the things that are important to you without having anything to know about that person, and even paying attention to see if they're interested in what you have to say. And so at least in one-on-one conversation, I would recommend the following tip, which is as you're talking, just stop and pause and look at the other person in the eye and see if they're giving you eye contact, if their body language seems like they're not interested, if they're itching to get away. Because I can promise you, if you watch other people interact tonight at our mixer afterwards, you're going to see this cardinal mistake made over and over and over. And there's one other point I want to wrap into this, which is a lot of us, information does not equal interest. This is like a good general point that I was taught a long time ago, which is people buy things and do things for emotional reasons. And then they justify with logic. We buy things or do things for emotional reasons, and then we justify with logic and information afterwards. And so don't talk to people about information. What? Talk to them about the benefits that are important to them and create an emotional spark in them. And then they'll use the information afterwards to justify what they're doing. And so just always remember, keep people interested and talk to them about the emotions that are important to them. Because it's not information that motivates people. It's emotion. It's something that they want. And if you can paint that picture for them, if you can paint the picture in their mind's eye that's important of the thing that they want, then you've got them. But if you're talking about yourself and you're going over information, you're never really going to have a chance to persuade folks. And so I was looking for the picture of the most bored person I could find. And I thought this was actually pretty applicable, right? Because what do you do, like, if you want to persuade a baby to laugh or to giggle or to make a face or do something, right? You're really trying to persuade them. Like, do you have any shot of persuading this little fat, chubby baby to do anything if it's this bored? Probably not. You want it, giggling and laughing and stuff like that. Alon, is that your baby picture? Is that? No, it's not. It's not. All right, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. It looked like Alon as a child, I forgot. Alon, of course, is the co-founder and CTO of DocStock. All right, general rules. Robin, how are we doing on time?
It's 5 minutes till 7:05.
All right, I like it. We're going to speed this mother up a little bit. Reciprocity compels. All right, let's talk. Now we're going, that was the general framework. Let's go into the rules now. Reciprocity. I'm a big fan of evolution, Darwinism, okay? We have actually survived as a species over the years by helping other folks. It's in our evolutionary DNA to want to help other people, but more importantly, once we're helped, we feel an actual compulsion to want to pay that favor back. So one of the best ways to persuade other people is to do something for them up front. Because we all naturally want to pay back the favors that were given to us. And one of the most important points I can make is that you can use reciprocity disproportionately. So I'll say it one more time. You can use reciprocity in your advantage disproportionately. So for example, one of the things that we do at DocStock is we put on a dinner every 6 weeks for 15 of the top CEOs in town and then about 5 venture capitalists. And I'll typically invite half of the people I know and then 5 people I kind of know as acquaintances and 5 people I haven't met at all. In that dinner, I'm typically inviting 1 to 2 people I really want to get something done with. A business development deal, have them advertise on our site, hire somebody. And Jeff was actually just recently at one of these dinners up in the Bay. Something as simple as getting a group of people together for dinner and paying for somebody else's dinner, those folks will feel so indebted to you, and they feel so indebted to us, that they'll disproportionately want to pay back that favor. So for example, if I had called a business contact cold and said, hey, I wanted to do this, there'd be a lot of friction in the process. So what do I do instead? I say, hey, we're doing this dinner. It's a great group of folks. We're going to have it sponsored. It's going to be a nice dinner. Come on out. I introduce them to all the people there. They get an $80 meal paid for them. And then because of that, they'll go to bat making introductions in their companies for me, setting up meetings, doing things to help out. And so what happens is they feel indebted, and I'm able to leverage that indebtedness to get the things done that I want in our business. But it's not proportionate. What did I really do? I invited them to dinner and spent $80 that wasn't even our own money, but a sponsor's, to feed them. Right? They were going to have dinner that night. They could have met all these other CEOs and VCs on their own. But because we were the leverage point, they feel indebted to us and we can do that. And so one of the things I often say is if you want to persuade other people, what can you do for them so they have a favor owed to you? And that means if you're trying to raise money, the folks you're trying to raise money to, send them introductions ahead of time to people that may be a good find. For folks that are bloggers, and this is a big tip for a lot of people that are trying to get press, reach out to press 3-4 months before you ever want an article from them. Leave comments on their blog, open up a dialogue, and give them tips to other stories. And I promise you, if you find some journalist that you give tips to for another story, when you come around and ask them to cover your story, they're going to feel indebted to you, and they're going to want to pay it back. One of the simple things that I do is when I got to know the folks at TechCrunch, and I'd met them at a mixer, and I would stop by and I would see them. I think Alon knows this. I had flown up when I was taking my last final in law school. I skipped it to go up north to meet Michael Arrington, who runs TechCrunch, and there was a mixture going on, and he was there with a bunch of folks. I was 27. I didn't have any income, but the 10 folks there I bought drinks for. Promise you that they're not saying that they do something specifically for that, but there's a feeling of reciprocity where someone's going to want to say, okay, I'll pay you back for that. And one of the things I do now is every single time that I stop by the TechCrunch office, I literally bring in like coffee and bagels and muffins when I walk in. And I'm, as the CEO of DocStock, buying all this like food and pastries for their 19-year-old interns. But I do it because I know in general, if I give out to others, reciprocity is going to come back and pay to us. Persistence pays. We talked about this in the beginning, but I think the kind of coolest example of this is just the story of the Shawshank Redemption, right? The guy was in prison for 20 years, just like knocking on this like little wall. And what was the quote that they used? It was time and pressure, right? With time and pressure, you can get anything done. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's something that's pretty self-explanatory, but the most persuasive people I know are by far the most persistent, with a big but. They know how to be persistent in a way that's not annoying and to make you feel comfortable. And so I'll say 2 points around this. One is, I think a lot of you make the mistake in business that you think it's not okay to be persistent with other folks. And I know a lot of you here have come up to me, and you did tonight, and you said, hey, I shot you an email about what we were doing. I don't know if you saw it. Typically, when it comes to business, if people aren't responding to you, it's not because they don't want to work with you. It's because they're too busy. So my general advice is keep coming at someone until you get a hard no. I kind of often say that there's business and then there's relationships. So if you're asking a girl out and she doesn't get back to you, like leave that alone and never bother her again. And if you're asking a business contact out and they don't get back to you, keep asking them out until they say yes or no. And just don't ever mix up the two, because that's just a really bad recipe for disaster. Compliment sincerely. Simple things. I mean, one of the best books I ever read was How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's totally antiquated. It seems like it's from a different time, but I'll tell you, it works. And the folks that I've met that are really the most persuasive compliment other people a lot. It just feels really good. And those people that compliment you, you like them a lot. And I'll say it with 2 caveats. One is compliment people sincerely. There's enough to like in other people, and there's enough good in everyone that you can find something to genuinely compliment them about. And I think people, for the most part, can tell the difference. And in fact, if you don't compliment someone sincerely, I think you're doing yourself a big disservice to ever being able to persuade them. And the other thing I'd say is there are different kinds of compliments. And if you compliment someone for either one or 2 things, something that's really important to somebody or something that they're really insecure about, that's going to go a long way in their book. So don't go to the really smart, nerdy guy and tell him how smart he is. Like, tell him how handsome he is. Don't go to the really hot girl and tell her like how beautiful she is. Tell her how creative and funny she is. There are things that are really important for us to want to be complimented for, and there are things that we're insecure about. And if you can find a way to compliment people about those things, you really, at the beginning of a relationship, will have them in the palm of your hand. And it's such a simple thing that most of us don't do, and it's just this easy thing to make other people feel good about themselves. I just found this picture. I just liked it because I didn't understand if the guy was half a strawberry and why he had 4 hands. Like, there's no reason for this picture other than it's like I didn't get what it was, and I wanted to share it with you guys and try to figure it out. Oh, it's ladybug. That makes a lot more sense than a strawberry man. Thank you. Thank you. Set expectations. I'm trying to think of the best example I can give of this. How many of you have seen the movie Life is Beautiful? So, I mean, this is like one of maybe like 5 movies I've ever cried in, right? And there's this little tiny boy, he's like 4 years old, and he's, going through the Holocaust, and his father sets it up that this is an entire game. And so he thinks it's this game, and instead of feeling, scared and nervous and worried, he thinks he's in this game world. And a big part of persuading people is to set their expectations. And a lot of you have heard me talk about this before in the context of fundraising and also in the context of working with investors. So I'll tell you one of the things that I typically try to do. One is, whether it's with the team in the office or with our outside investors, I always try to under-promise and over-deliver. When people have really, really high expectations of something you're going to do going in and you miss it, it's hard to persuade and to move them. But when you're constantly exceeding people's expectations, then it's more easy to persuade them in the direction that you want to get them to go. The other thing that I can basically say is, so setting expectations also means just controlling the context. And so when I would do stage hypnosis shows, one of the things that I would do is I would walk up on stage, and one of the reasons a stage hypnosis show works is, remember, one is context matters. So people are there because they know hypnosis is going to happen that evening. And I'd walk up, and the very first thing I would say is this phrase. And when you don't say this phrase, the rest of the night's pretty much fucked up, which is, who here tonight wants to have fun and get a little crazy? Okay? Now, out of a room of 500 people, if 20 people raise their hand, we've already gone through a process of self-selection. And I've set the expectation of what's going to happen that evening. Who here wants to have a little fun and get a little crazy? So the folks that are coming up on stage are naturally going to be the people that are more outlandish and want to do the things. And then what happens is I'm going through actually putting people in trance on stage. I'm literally telling these people, right, who they're nervous because they've got all these folks watching them, that if you follow my directions tonight and do everything I say, you're going to feel great. And I'm also making subtle hints that if they don't follow my directions, they're going to get punished by getting kicked off the stage, or they're going to get made fun of by the crowd. So I'm literally setting the expectation with every single person there that they have to follow my directions to have a good feeling, and if they don't follow my directions, they're going to get punished. And so setting expectations really for me is about two things. One, it's about managing other people's expectations of the situation so that they're not expecting too much, and then literally controlling what people are doing by setting their expectations going into every single setting. Don't assume. This is kind of a simple point. I wasn't even sure whether to make it a general rule, but this was one of the most important things that was taught to me in sales, and I'll tell you in two ways, right? Like when we first saw this video of Susan Boyle and you saw her come out, I don't think anyone expected that voice was going to come out of, right? And that's one of the biggest mistakes we make when we're trying to persuade other folks is we make lots of assumptions. We make assumptions about them. But I think even more importantly is we make assumptions about what people are willing to do and what they're not willing to do. And that is a big mistake. And there's a fine distinction to make here, which is the following, is you've got to ask questions of other people to see what are the things that are important to them. But a lot of times at the end of the day, we will get nervous or self-conscious about what we're offering to somebody else. And we'll say, oh, that girl or that guy doesn't want to go out with me, so I'm not going to talk to them. This person's not going to be interested in my business, so I'm not going to bring it up to them. They're not going to want to do this thing, so I'm not going to talk about it. One of the most important things in sales and in persuasion is don't ever assume or put your judgments on another person of what they want or what they don't want. Find out what's important to them and communicate your value to them and let them make the decision at the end of the day. And it's one of the hardest lessons for people to get grasp onto when they start doing sales, which is they'll make an assumption that someone else doesn't have the money for your product or service, doesn't have the time, doesn't have the interest. Don't do that. Don't make an assumption about what somebody else wants. Offer your value in the most persuasive way by using these techniques and let them make the decision at the end of the day. Don't you make that decision for them. Create scarcity. Probably one of the most important things in terms of persuading people, right? If you are the one fellow at the party and there's lots of girls around there, you're going to be the one getting attention. There is something innate that when the object of what you want is right there and it's like too easy for you to get it, you repel from it. And so my friend talks about this example, and I think it's like the most genius thing in the world is, for those of you that may still be single, like, have you ever gone out, or if you're not single, like, try to imagine it. Like, if you were, like, Alana, if you were single, now, right? Because I know there wasn't texting when you were single. There was barely, So you go out and you get somebody's number, and you're like, oh, I'll text you later. And maybe you're a guy and you've got some girl's number, or maybe you're a girl and you have some guy's number. And say you're not even that interested in this person. Okay, maybe a couple days go by, and you text them. Like, all right, I want to see what's going on. Like, hey, what's going on? And you're thinking that you're the hot shit, right? It's like, oh, this, like, as soon as you text them, you're like, I don't even want this person to write me back. Like, I don't even know why I texted them. It's like, fuck it, Why did I even text them? I don't even want to talk to them. And then an hour will go by, and 2 hours, and 3 hours, and 4 hours, and 5 hours, and they haven't texted you back. And this person that 6 hours ago you didn't even want to have text you back, you're now wondering, you're looking at your phone every 5 minutes like, why isn't this girl texting me back? What's going on, right? And you're literally wondering for that period of time that they don't text you, what's going on? Why aren't they writing me back? Because they've all of a sudden become more scarce, something that you think that you can get any moments there, right? And then what happens as soon as they text you back, oh, I'm not interested at all now. I can tell who the single people are because they're actually laughing at my jokes. Fuck the rest of you. Create urgency. If people want to be persuaded, you got to persuade them in the now. It's not for later, right? If there's a run on a bank, it's because people want their money now. So you can't set somebody up to do something that they're going to do in the future. It doesn't work that way. You've either elicited somebody's emotion and their decision making right now in the now, or it hasn't worked at all. So when you go to persuade people, you're persuading them for the now. And the best way to do that is to create a sense of urgency. And one of the best ways to create a sense of urgency is to create scarcity. One of the keys of raising money is to build momentum and to create scarcity, right? So a lot of times people have said, hey, raising money from angels or venture capitalists, it's like herding cats. You can't go around and chase all these folks. You got to get them to come to you. And one of the ways that as an entrepreneur you always end up closing the deal on raising money and also get the best terms possible is by creating scarcity. By saying, hey, look, there's multiple people that are in this deal that want to come in. If you don't act now, you're not going to be in it. And so one of the tricks is, even when there's not scarcity, to manufacture it. So if you're going to apply for a job, even if you don't have other jobs lined up, hey, I need an offer letter in the next 3 days because I've got this other offer letter going on here. And so you've got to help manufacture scarcity so that there's urgency on somebody's part to want to do something now, because you can't motivate somebody to do something in the future. Image matters. Images, there's kind of two parts to this. I actually found out this was from Battlestar Galactica, and it's a play on The Last Supper, which I thought was kind of interesting. I thought it was interesting for two reasons. One, I was going to have it as a point in general, but decided not to, but social proof is really important when it comes to persuasion, right? People need to hear from other people how good or valuable something is. And one of the parts of social persuasion is just image. Image makes a difference. When somebody walks into my office, like, I'm looking to see how they look, how they dress, how they act. That's the first thing I notice about them. It doesn't mean someone can't overcome it or I'm not looking for other qualities as well, but people have an expectation of how successful people look, act, dress, interact, are treated by other people. And that image makes a difference. I'm going to skip that one because I'm not the best image person myself, so when I figure that one out, I'll talk to you guys more about it. Truth tell. So this is probably the opposite of what I would consider to be the person I would expect the truth from, right? The classic, cheesy car salesman. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to look like in 25 years, Alon, by the way. I think my dad actually has that outfit. That is going to be me, unfortunately. So there's this principle, there's this thing I kind of like developed in high school. I used to call it truth serum. And there's a certain personality I have. For those of you that know me, I can be pretty both direct and blunt. But one of the things that I found really interesting is the following, is that a lot of us go through and have conversations with other folks on the periphery. A lot of it's bullshit talk. We don't call other people out on their bullshit. And there's a specific way to do it, but when you talk to people about things that other people aren't willing to talk to them about, you have a lot of influence over those folks. So for example, one of the things that I often do when I meet people is I'll ask them about their families. I'll ask them about their ethnicity. I'll ask them about their relationships, things that they wouldn't expect. You'd also be surprised that not a lot of people want to engage in conflict or tell you bad things about yourself. But if you actually have a way of calling somebody out on the shit that they do that's bad or harmful about themselves, and you do it in a way that's not judgmental, but simply to say, hey, here's a statement of fact, like, you're doing X. People are kind of stunned. People really aren't, I don't think most of us are used to other people being really, really straightforward and honest with us, right? To the point that if, this is a little bit more of a comical example, but you guys have seen it before here, is a lot of times people will come up after we'll have a guest up here, and someone in the crowd will ask a question, and I don't think anyone in here understands what the fuck they're saying. I don't think the people up on stage understand what they're saying. And a lot of us, because we don't want to be rude, will just try to answer it or go along. And I try not to do that. Even if it means I'm calling somebody out, I'll say, hey, I really have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm pretty sure other people here don't either. So can you re-clarify what you're trying to say and ask, because there's probably something important in there. And that's just one small little example, but if you try to truth tell without judgment or indignation or trying to be critical of other people, but simply for the point of cutting through the bullshit, you'd be surprised at how people respond to you and the trust that it engenders to actually persuade them to do the things that you want them to do. Build rapport, and this is the last one, the general, and then we go into specific personal skills. Robin, how are we doing on time?
Probably want to move it along.
All right, we're going to move it along. So there's a general principle of building rapport. This is something, there was another thing that I used to do, which is there's this offset of psychology called neuro-linguistic programming, right? Oh, thanks. He gave me a napkin. I guess I'm sweating. That's a good truth-telling. Thank you. Building rapport. Building rapport is basically the principle that when you meet people that are like you like them. If you meet people that dress like you, have the same house, live in the same area, drive the same car, you tend to feel a connection with them. So one of the things that's interesting, too, that people that study neuro-linguistic programming do is they'll do something called mirroring and matching, which means those things that I just described are, for the most part, conscious choices and behaviors. But there's lots of unconscious things that we do as well, too. What are the unconscious things we do? The unconscious things we do is our cadence, how we hold ourselves, our body language, how we talk, the speed at which we talk, when we pause. There's lots of unconscious choices we make at all time. And so one of the techniques that people do in interviews and in other situations is they will literally match and mirror the person that they're talking to. So if the person that they're talking to has their arms crossed and is standing like this, the person talking to them will stand with their arms crossed. They'll literally match and mirror their body language and voice. And what you'll see is people will end up getting into rapport. And the principle is, just like in your conscious decisions, that you like people that are like you, that dress like you, have the same house, have the same car, have the same backgrounds. You feel comfortable with people that have the same kind of unconscious behaviors as you. And what you can see is when people get in a rapport, that if you match and mirror other people's behaviors, you can actually move or do something and they will follow you. And it's just a simple technique that people often do in interviews, is that you match and mirror the person that's interviewing you. And one of the best examples of this is that when you meet someone that's really excitable in a situation and is really angry about something, one of the best ways to calm them down is not to start off speaking calmly, But to be excited as well, too, that really sucks. I'd be really angry as well. And you match your energy and attention. And then you slowly start to bring down your energy. And they'll follow you. All right, personal skills. We're going to go through this. I think we're on rule number 15. We got 6 more to go. Behavioral flexibility is what gives you control in a situation. And nobody knows this better than kids. What gives you control in a situation is not the person with the most authority. I'll repeat this. It's not the person with the most authority that controls the situation. It's the person with the most flexibility, right? If you're dealing with a kid, and I'm really not the best person to talk about this, but Alon talks to me about his kids all the time. I go there, I hang out with them. Like, kids are crazy. They will try any and every single behavior to get you to do what they want them to do. Like, first they'll come to you and say, like, oh, I love you, you're the best, can I have this thing? And you're like, no, you can't have it. And then they're going to get mad, like, I can't believe that you're not going to give this to me. I want this thing, like, right now. And that doesn't work. And then they're going to go to a different set of behaviors. It's like, I'm going to starve myself. You know, it's like then they give you indignation. They will keep trying different sets of behaviors until they finally find the behavior that you give them the thing that they want. And that's a skill that comes really naturally to kids. It doesn't come that naturally to us as adults. We often think that there's authority that we need to have. We need to have control of the situation. But it's the person that's the most flexible in the situation, that's willing to try the most behaviors that ends up controlling the situation, right? If someone's just willing to take the situation a lot farther than anyone else, it doesn't matter how much authority you have. If you don't have the same flexibility as that person, you're never going to be in control. Learn to transfer energy to others. All right. So I think this is something that comes very naturally to women and not so naturally to men. If you're trying to persuade other people, you have to infuse your energy to them. And you've got to learn how to transfer energy from yourself to other people. I'm not talking about like some mystical, crazy, like, I'm not saying there's like energy waves going from me into you and that you're feeling happy right now because I'm talking to you. What I am saying is that there are simple things that we do to give each other energy. And you always, as trying to persuade someone else, need to have your energy level higher than the other person's. And you can't be fake. You can't do things that are outside what you do, outside of what naturally comes to you. But here are some of the things that I'll often do to try to give energy. Is I will talk a little bit more loudly than everyone else. I will be more excited. You'll often see me come by and like go to employees and like pat them on the shoulder and ask how they're doing. One of my buddies, Will, is amazing at giving energy by laughing at other people, like laughing at their jokes. So you'd be at dinner with this like British guy, Will, and he's just this crazy laugh that you say something. You're like, oh my God, what did I say that, it was great, this is amazing. And I'm pretty sure he does that pretty consciously. You can make other people laugh. I mean, women like just know how to do this crazy, like, where they'll be sitting next to you and it's like they'll just like look at you and smile and put your hand on your knee. It's like, oh my God, like what's going on here? what just happened? I tried putting my hand on Alon's knee. He didn't like that very much. Giving your energy to other people is extremely important. And I would say is one of the most important things overall, that it's an interpersonal skill set, is what are the things that you're going to do to make somebody else feel good? It's giving them eye contact when you're talking to them. It's being excited so that they can hear the excitement in your voice about the things that you're talking to them about. It's about listening to somebody. It's about some kind of physical touch so that you can connect with them. These are the kind of things that you do to give your energy to other people that are really important if you want to persuade them. Communicating clearly is key, right? So Ronald Reagan had the reputation as being the great communicator. You can't persuade somebody if they don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. And one of the consistent biggest mistakes I see every month here at this event is people will get up, they'll stand up, and they'll ask the folks on stage here some question. And like I said, I don't think the majority of us have any idea what we're talking about. And the art of communicating clearly and succinctly is really just that. It's an art. And I'll give you the principle that I live by, which is explain it to me and explain it to somebody else like they're a 5th grader. If I could explain my idea or concept to a 5th grader, And that fifth grader could tell their fifth grader friend, who tells another fifth grader friend, that then tells it to me, and it's pretty much the same, I think I'm in pretty good shape. But a lot of us think we need to talk in fancy, complicated, long, drawn-out ways. Get to the fucking point, say what you gotta say, and make sure somebody understands it. Because if you don't, you really have very little chance of persuading them to do the things that you want them to do. Being prepared always gives you the advantage. I mean, one of the simplest things, and I'll tell you honestly, I'm not always the best at this, is just any situation you go in, if you know more about that person than they know about you, you've got the advantage. If you're on a business development call and you know what school that person went to, and you know how much money the company makes, and you know the things that they're trying to do, you've always got an advantage. And what you want when it comes to persuading people is you want an unfair advantage. You don't want to be on an evil playing field. If I'm trying to persuade someone else, I don't want it to be even. I always want an advantage. And one of the ways that I have the advantage is always being more prepared than the person next to me. Detach and stay calm in conflict. I know I saw this picture of a wolf, and I just thought, like, well, wolf hunting, right? And there's all this craziness going around, like their life's in danger, they're going to kill something else, but they seem pretty calm. Like, I think one of the key things is if you let your emotions come into play in a negotiation and when you're trying to persuade somebody or when they're trying to persuade you, I think you've lost the advantage. The more detached and objective you can look at a situation, often more the more strategical advantage you'll have in that situation. And one of the big mistakes that we make is that we let our emotions guide our thoughts and actions and what we want to do, where it's the exact opposite. It's you want to tap into the other person's emotions. You want their emotions lit up for the things that they want, and you want to help them get there. If you let your negative emotions come into play of getting angry, losing your temper, like losing temper is a sign of wanting to regain control. We lose our temper when we feel out of control, and it's a way for us to try to regain control. And often we're trying to regain control of a situation where there's other people involved. But it very seldomly actually gives you any control of the situation. It just perpetuates you being more out of control. And so often the way, especially when there's conflict going on, if you can detach from a situation where there's conflict and not let your emotions come into play, you will have the advantage when it comes to persuading other people. Which kind of brings me to my other point, which is use anger purposefully. Being angry is a very effective tool in persuading other folks. Just not when you get angry when you don't intend to be. One of the principles of behavioral flexibility is who's ever willing to try as many different behaviors controls the situation. And so if you can channel your anger and indignation in a specific instance at a specific time, you can be very effective in persuading somebody. Because most people don't want to deal with conflict. And if you're willing to take conflict to a level that they're not, and you're willing to show that they're angry, they're not going to want to have to deal with you under any circumstance whatsoever. But if you're angry and you're not controlling what's going on, then you're the one out of control. And then kind of like the last one that, I don't know, I think is just overall really important, which is really certainty. When you talk about what persuades other people, like what's going to make this guy be willing to jump off that other than for a picture that he's got to do. I think we've talked about this before, that you don't always have certainty, and sometimes you have to manufacture. And some of you here, when I gave this story about belief, and maybe I'll wrap up and I'll finish with that now, because I think some of you have heard it, and I'll save that story for a different time, actually. But people are not going to follow you if they don't get a sense that you are absolutely 100% certain about reaching a goal or objective or outcome. And one of the things that, how many of you here are in the process of starting your own business or have run your own business or want to start your own company? Okay, so we're dealing with the majority of folks here. In my opinion, there are two buckets of people for the purpose of this example. There are people that start shit, and then there are people that follow people that start shit. And you get to, and in the course of your life, like you probably go into different camps all the different time. Like you're not just one or the other, but at different times, you're different things. If you want to get people to follow you because you're the person that starts something, they're following you because you've got this undeniable certainty that you can reach a certain outcome. And that is a very attractive, compelling proposition for people. Certainty is very powerful. Certainty is powerful enough to change our biology and physiology and the way that we actually deal with sickness. Certainty about God, certainty about family, certainty about a specific outcome. And if you don't feel certain about what you're trying to do and thus need to persuade other people to follow you for, they're never going to. And you can fake it before you make it. That's totally okay. I'm still in the process of faking it right now. I'm just incrementally getting better, probably. But certainty is probably one of the most important things to make sure that other people believe in you and that you have a chance to persuade them. So that is the 21 rules for how to persuade other folks. Thanks for coming out, guys.